An ordinary evening turned into a turning point that could no longer be ignored. One innocent question, and a crack ran through the familiar rhythm of their life. She watched the movie, but her thoughts were elsewhere. He smiled, but felt a quiet unease growing beneath his skin. Words, spoken as if in jest, began to spark consequences far too real. What started as an attempt to reignite their connection became a blaze that consumed everything they had spent years building. He agreed. For her. For them. For the chance. But while he stepped forward, she stepped sideways. When another woman entered the picture, he didn't see excitement, he saw distance. And when she asked for more, he realized this wasn't a search for intimacy anymore. It was an escape. He didn't yell, didn't blame. He simply began to see things clearly. And when it came time to choose, stay in the shadow of someone else's desires or walk into his own truth, he chose himself. Because love doesn't always die from betrayal. Sometimes it fades when it's no longer mutual. Hello, my friend. I'm so glad you stopped by my channel. If you're here for the first time, don't forget to subscribe and share this video with your friends or family. It really helps my channel a lot. Please tell me in which city or country you watched this video. I value every one of your comments. So let's get started. Ethan lounged low on the couch, the half-eaten bowl of popcorn in his lap, nearly forgotten. Camille sat just behind him, legs curled beneath her, eyes fixed on the screen. But it was obvious her thoughts had drifted far from the movie they'd chosen for the evening. What had begun with shared laughter and playful commentary had faded into sporadic conversation as the film wore on. These kinds of nights, uncomplicated, slow-paced, just the two of them, were ones they both held dear. But then Camille said something that pulled Ethan sharply out of his comfort. "Do you ever think about being with other people?" she asked, her voice casual. "Like, not seriously. I mean, maybe a threesome or swapping partners or something. I'm not saying I want that. It's just kind of a weird thought, right?" Her tone was breezy, as if she were tossing a joke into the room to fill the quiet. Ethan, hand buried absent-mindedly in the popcorn, turned toward her with a puzzled expression. He let out a soft laugh, though it felt more like a reflex than amusement. Camille didn't usually bring up things like this. "I guess it's normal to have random thoughts now and then," he said, trying to match her tone, to keep things light. The conversation quickly drifted elsewhere, but her words didn't leave him. They clung to his mind, echoing. After nearly a decade with Camille, he usually had a read on what she was thinking, but this comment didn't feel familiar. Her tone had been weightless, but the idea itself landed heavy in his chest. Even if it was meant as a joke, the suggestion unsettled him. As the film dragged toward its conclusion, Ethan kept his eyes on the screen, but none of the dialogue registered. Was she bored with him? Or was it just a random musing tossed out during a dull movie? There wasn't any real indication she was dissatisfied. Camille had always been warm, steady, loving. And yet, her comment had unearthed a question he hadn't thought to ask before. When the credits finally rolled, Camille turned off the television and said she was going to bed, blaming tiredness. Ethan remained on the couch, staring at the darkened screen, his thoughts spinning. He needed to understand what she meant, but the idea of hearing the truth made him uneasy. "I'll talk to her tomorrow," he promised himself. As he finally got up and walked toward the bedroom, her words repeated in his head, not as a joke, but as a quiet signal that maybe things weren't as simple as he'd believed. The room went dark, but the darkness offered no peace. By morning, Ethan was up earlier than usual. As coffee brewed, he stood motionless, replaying the night before in his head. He knew the topic couldn't be left untouched, but he wasn't sure how to approach it without creating tension. He didn't want to accuse or interrogate, but he also couldn't let it slide. He stared into the curling steam rising from his mug, hoping it might clear his mind. When Camille walked into the kitchen, his heart picked up pace. But he knew this was a moment that needed honesty. "About what you said last night," he said softly, almost cautiously. Camille froze for a second while reaching for the fridge. Her posture changed, just slightly, but enough for him to notice. "What do you mean?" she asked, her tone light, though her eyes betrayed a flicker of discomfort. Ethan drew in a breath. "I've been thinking about it. Was it something random you said? Or do you feel like something isn't right between us?" He watched her closely, hoping her body language might reveal what her words couldn't. Camille shut the fridge and leaned back against the counter, folding her arms, not out of anger, but more like she was bracing herself. "It wasn't meant to upset you," she said. "It just kind of slipped out." Then, more quietly, she added, "But maybe that's a sign we need to talk, really talk, about where we're at." Her gaze dropped. "I do love our life together. I really do. But sometimes it feels like we're stuck on a loop. It's not your fault. It's not even really ours. It's just me." Ethan let the silence stretch, letting her words sink in. Camille wasn't usually this open. She was the steady one, the one who always seemed sure. But now, that confidence had cracked just a little. "So you're feeling unsatisfied?" he asked, careful not to sound accusing. "I wouldn't call it that," she replied slowly. "It's more like I miss the excitement, the feeling of something new. I don't want to change anything drastic. I'm not trying to hurt you. It's just those thoughts pop into my head now and then. Not because I'd ever act on them, but because they shake up the routine." Ethan felt a dull ache in his chest, but surprisingly, there was also a strange sense of relief. As painful as it was to hear, there was honesty in her words, and that honesty mattered. "I think I understand," he said, and even he was surprised by the steadiness in his voice. "Everyone wonders now and then if something's missing." He hesitated, then asked, "If I had those kinds of thoughts about being with someone else, how would that make you feel?" Camille took a moment before replying, choosing her words with care. "If I'm being honest, I'd probably feel threatened, maybe insecure, but I'd still want to know. It would be harder if you kept it to yourself." "I don't know, Ethan. Everything feels like a mess right now," Camille said quietly, her voice laced with honesty. "I just needed to speak the truth, because you're the only person I genuinely trust." Ethan gave her a slight nod, the kind that said more through his eyes than any overt movement. What she'd said wasn't easy to hear, but he appreciated her openness. Still, it felt like something was missing, like she'd opened a door just enough to peek out, without stepping through. Careful not to push too hard, Ethan took a measured risk. "This seems to be weighing on you, and on us. Maybe instead of dancing around it, we should face it head on. I'm not talking about throwing everything off balance, just being honest together. Facing it side by side." Camille's expression shifted, a complex mix of relief, surprise, and a shadow of doubt. "What do you mean exactly?" she asked, barely above a whisper, as the silence stretched between them. Ethan's voice remained steady, gentle. "I want to really understand you. But more than that, I want this to bring us closer, not drive a wedge between us. You matter to me more than anything. And if there's something creating distance, I'd rather deal with it than pretend it's not there." When he suggested the idea of involving someone else, he treaded carefully, choosing his words with intention. "Maybe we could bring in a new energy, someone familiar, maybe one of your friends, someone who'd make the idea feel safe and not overwhelming." Camille's eyes widened, caught off guard. Then she gave a small, uncertain laugh. "That's definitely not where I thought this was going," she said. "Honestly, I was imagining something entirely different." She hesitated before continuing. "I was thinking, maybe a man. Something totally outside the framework of what you just proposed." Her confession threw Ethan for a moment. He raised an eyebrow but kept his tone calm and curious. "Is that what you're really thinking about?" he asked, not accusatory, just genuinely seeking clarity. Camille let out a slow breath, as if releasing something she'd held inside too long. "Yes, I'm not obsessed with the idea, but it's come to mind more than a few times. Ethan sat in silence, absorbing her words. He didn't want to shut her down or create tension. After a pause, he nodded slowly. All right. Then let's take this one step at a time. We'll start with your suggestion. Bring in a friend you trust. If that goes well, we can take the next step. Your step. Camille's face lit up, her grin widening with excitement. Really? Yes, absolutely. Yes. Her enthusiasm took him by surprise. Part of him wanted to ask what made her so sure, but he decided not to risk shifting the mood. Okay, he said with a small, cautious smile. So, who do you have in mind? Camille immediately reached for her phone, scrolling through contacts. She needed someone who wouldn't overthink, someone who'd understand without judgment. After a few seconds of indecision, she landed on a name, Letitia. Warm, confident, and perceptive. She hit dial. Hey, Letitia. I've got kind of an unusual favor to ask you. And with that, the evening was set in motion. Later, their house was wrapped in a tense, expectant calm. Right on schedule, Letitia showed up, radiating her usual charm and ease, instantly softening the thick atmosphere like sunshine breaking through cloud cover. Camille greeted her with a nervous laugh, trying to mask the churn of emotions underneath. Ethan kept his expression composed, though inside, he was just as unsettled. Letitia walked in like she belonged there, tossed her bag on the couch, and flopped down with a relaxed smile. So, she teased, who cooked up this wild little idea? Camille and Ethan exchanged a brief look before Camille replied, I guess we both did. We just needed to shake things up. Break the routine. Her voice hinted more at a need for reassurance than firm conviction. The conversation wandered to lighter topics, old memories, random stories, anything to keep the tension from taking over. Letitia, ever the social alchemist, steered things smoothly, keeping the vibe playful while also picking up on the subtleties in the room. Her jokes were casual, but her gaze was observant. Wine flowed, laughter surfaced in short bursts, but beneath it all ran a current of quiet anticipation. Eventually, Letitia leaned forward, her tone softening, more sincere. All right, let's stop pretending this is just a wine night. I love you both, and I'm here because I trust you, and I support whatever you're exploring. But this only works if everyone's truly in. So, is this what you both want? Her question lingered in the air like mist. Camille was the first to respond, her tone steady and sure. Yes, I want this. I really do. Ethan followed a moment later, his voice calm but thoughtful. Yeah, we're ready. Even as he said it, something stirred within him, a quiet uncertainty. Not about Camille, not about Letitia, but about where this path might lead them and what it could change. The moments that followed were filled with tentative smiles, subtle gestures, and a shared effort to ease the tension. They were all trying, to be honest, to stay open, to move forward together, and for now, that was enough. Ethan studied the interaction between Camille and Letitia, attempting to interpret the nuanced expressions flickering across his wife's face. Camille exuded a mixture of anticipation and anxiety, while Letitia, perpetually poised, subtly guided the atmosphere, her calm presence smoothing over the discomfort that might have otherwise emerged. Yet, as the evening progressed, something unexpected began to take shape in Ethan's mind. Though Camille seemed fully engaged, he started to feel detached, as if he were merely witnessing a private moment rather than participating in it. What was meant to draw them closer had begun, for Ethan, to reveal something he hadn't anticipated. With every passing moment, it felt less like an intimate connection and more like the unveiling of a truth he hadn't been prepared to confront. As the night wound down, Letitia, ever perceptive, gently brought things to a close. That's probably enough for tonight, she said softly. Take some time to process everything. I'm grateful you included me. She stood, embraced Camille warmly, and gave Ethan a thoughtful, almost sympathetic smile before slipping out. When the door closed and quiet filled the room, Camille turned toward him, her face lit with hope, though tempered with uncertainty. "So, what did you think?" she asked, her voice laced with anticipation. Ethan didn't reply immediately. He remained still, staring at her, a strange cocktail of clarity and confusion washing over him. In that stillness, something within him surfaced. This whole experience had dredged up questions he hadn't realized were buried. Eventually, he sank onto the couch, leaning forward, elbows on his knees, eyes fixed on some indistinct point across the room. Camille remained where she was, a few feet away, the eagerness in her gaze now edged with unease. Her question still lingered between them, unanswered. He didn't even know how to begin. The silence thickened, growing heavier with each second, more suffocating than any words they might have exchanged. Finally, he stood, ran a hand along the back of his neck, and let out a breath. "I don't know, Camille. I'm trying to understand it." His tone was calm but carried weight, and the honesty in it made Camille tense. "You don't know what to think?" she asked, arms folding across her chest defensively. "What does that mean? Isn't this what we agreed on?" Ethan began to pace, wrestling with thoughts that wouldn't settle into coherence. He knew he owed her the truth, but he also didn't want to cause unnecessary pain. "I hoped this would bring us back together, that maybe it could help us reconnect. I really thought it might shift something for us. But what I actually felt, it surprised me." Camille's arms drew tighter around herself, as if bracing for a blow. "What did you feel then?" she asked, barely above a whisper. He stopped pacing and looked directly at her. "I felt like you were excited by the experience, not by what it meant for us. Don't get me wrong, I know you were looking forward to it. But it felt like your energy was going into what you wanted from it, not what we could find in it together." The words landed hard. Camille parted her lips as if to speak, but then hesitated, drawing in a slow, shaky breath before turning her gaze aside. "I didn't realize you saw it that way," she said quietly. "For me, it was supposed to shake us out of the routine, something thrilling we could share." Ethan's voice grew more pointed, touched by frustration. "But I didn't feel that thrill. I spent the whole night trying to find a way to connect with you. And all I could see was you, completely lit up, while I was fading into the background. It was like I wasn't even there. That hurt, Camille." She didn't respond right away, the gravity of his words sinking in. When she did speak, her voice was soft and remorseful. "I never meant for you to feel that way. I wanted something that would wake us up, make us feel alive again." Ethan dragged a hand down his face, visibly worn. He understood what she'd tried to do, but that didn't change the fact that he felt left behind. "I know you had good intentions, Camille. I get that. But now I need to ask, was this really about the two of us? Or is this part of something you're exploring on your own?" His question hovered in the silence, heavier than anything they'd said so far. Camille blinked, momentarily thrown. Her eyes searched his face, as though trying to understand the depth of what he was asking. "I want this to be about us. Truly I do," she said, her voice cracking under the weight of emotion. "But maybe I didn't think it through the way you're thinking about it now." Ethan nodded slowly, letting her words sink in. "Maybe that's the core of it. Maybe we're approaching this from completely different directions. And honestly, I'm not sure this is something we can work through together. At least not yet." His words sent a chill through Camille. "What are you saying?" she asked, voice trembling. "Are you saying this is the end?" Her eyes shimmered, on the verge of tears. Ethan hesitated, carefully choosing what to say next. He knew the weight his response would carry. "I'm not saying I'm walking away, but I am saying we can't keep going like this. I need time, Camille. I need space to figure out what all of this really means for me. Because right now, I feel completely unmoored. And I think you do too. Camille remained motionless, his words echoing inside her. Part of her wanted to argue, to push back, to reject what he was saying. But deep down, she recognized the truth in it. What was meant to be healing had instead exposed the growing gap between them, and now they had to face just how far they'd drifted apart. A thick, oppressive quiet settled between them, heavy with the words they hadn't dared speak. Ethan didn't move, his eyes locked on Camille, though his mind churned with tangled thoughts. There were still truths lingering in the shadows, but he was trying to piece things together before daring another step. Their conversation had stalled, hitting an impasse neither of them knew how to break. He wasn't sure anymore if he wanted to break it, or even if he could. Camille was the one who finally shattered the stillness. Her voice was calm, but beneath it simmered something urgent. Ethan, are you still going to stand by what you promised? You said that if things worked out with Letitia, I'd get to decide what came next, and I told you, I want to invite another man. Her words struck like a sudden jolt, catching Ethan unprepared. He blinked, stunned. His eyes searched hers, looking for any hint of mockery or manipulation. But there was none. Only a quiet, unshaken determination. No mischief, no disguise. Just a firm reminder of what she believed she was owed. That request snapped something into clarity for him. The woman he had spent the last 7 years with suddenly felt like someone else. Camille, are you being serious? His voice came low, each syllable landing with weight. Without thinking, he stepped backward, as if the distance would help him process what he was hearing. You really want to go through with this? After everything we just talked about? Her gaze didn't waver. You made a promise, Ethan. You said we'd be honest about our desires, and this is part of mine. I don't understand why it's so hard for you to accept that. He shook his head, disbelief etched into every line of his face. It's not that I don't get it, Camille. It's what it represents. I thought we were trying to rebuild something between us. I thought this was about finding our way back. But right now, the way you're insisting on this, it feels like it's only about you. Like I'm no longer part of what matters. Camille opened her mouth, ready to push back, but he raised a hand to stop her. He needed to speak before the courage slipped away. That night with Letitia, it showed me a lot. The biggest thing? I love you, but we've changed. We're not who we were when we got married. And I think, deep down, you feel that too. Tears welled in Camille's eyes, though she held herself together. So that's it? You're ending everything because I wanted something different? He moved closer, hands unsteady, the tremble giving away everything he was trying to hold in. No, not just because of that. It's everything this week has shown us. I've tried to close the distance between us, Camille. But what you're asking, it shows just how wide the gap has become. And I'm not sure it's a gap we can cross anymore. This isn't about a broken promise. It's about how far apart we've grown. She couldn't hold the tears back now. Ethan, please don't do this. I know I haven't been perfect. I know I've asked a lot. But please, don't give up on us. He looked at her, long and hard, every unspoken feeling sitting between them like a wall. I never wanted to lose you. But I think we've already lost each other. A long time ago. And if we keep pretending, keep trying to salvage something that's no longer there, all we're going to do is hurt each other more. He turned, snatched his keys off the counter, and headed for the door. Just before stepping out, he paused, looking back at her one final time. I hope you find what you're searching for, but I can't be part of it anymore. And then he was gone, leaving Camille standing there, her cheeks streaked with tears, staring at the empty space he had just left behind. Ethan sat in the armchair a few moments longer, weighed down by sorrow and fatigue. He knew he couldn't stay, not without making it worse. Remaining would only prolong the ache, keep them circling the same unresolved pain. Everything that needed saying had already been said. The raw, unvarnished truth now lay between them. He slowly stood, eyes avoiding Camille's, and made his way toward the door. Her gaze followed him, hollow and stunned, her body frozen. "You're really leaving?" she whispered, barely loud enough to hear. He stopped, hand resting on the knob, not turning to face her. "I need space, Camille. Time to think. And I think you do too." She wanted to stop him, to reach for him and ask him to stay, but something in his voice told her it was too late. There was no anger in his tone, just a quiet finality that cut deeper than any shout could. The sound of the door closing echoed like a thunderclap in the silence that followed. Camille remained on the couch, unmoving, the silence more deafening now than it had ever been. This wasn't just an argument. It was a complete unraveling. And maybe that unraveling had begun a long time before either of them noticed. In the weeks that followed, Ethan kept his distance. He rented a small apartment, a quiet place where he could clear his head, try to understand where things had gone wrong. Those first few nights were sleepless. He barely touched food. His mind replayed their best and worst moments, wondering if a different choice might have led them somewhere else. Camille, meanwhile, was swept up in an emotional tide. Grief came first, then guilt, heavy and suffocating. She combed through every conversation, every decision, trying to pinpoint where the fracture began. She wanted to call him, to fix what had broken, but the fear that it truly was broken kept her still. Worse than the silence was the gnawing dread that nothing she said could change anything anymore. She waited in silence, clinging to a fragile sense of hope, watching for even the faintest sign from him that things might still be salvaged. But no sign ever appeared. Around 4 weeks later, the divorce papers arrived. She wasn't caught off guard. Deep down, she had known this moment would come. Still, the physical presence of the documents made it undeniable. The end had arrived, and it was now tangible in her hands. There was no accompanying message, no personal words from Ethan, only the cold detachment of legal forms. It felt impersonal, almost procedural, though Camille recognized it wasn't a deliberate cruelty. It reflected what their marriage had gradually become, depleted, exhausted, and too brittle to endure further strain. Ethan added his signature days later, pausing before he did, not because he questioned the decision, but because he understood that signing meant closing a chapter that had once held so much promise. With quiet composure, he wrote his name, then carefully aligned the papers and handed them over to the attorney. As he walked out of the building, a muted blend of melancholy and release washed over him. This was the end of a journey that had begun with affection and shared dreams, but had slowly revealed that love, by itself, isn't always enough to keep two people together. He didn't blame Camille, nor did he fault himself. He simply recognized that they had both reached the moment when moving on was the only path left. That night, when Camille received word that the divorce had been finalized, the tears came once again. But this time, they weren't fueled by the sharp sting of heartbreak. They were quieter, gentler, the tears of someone who had begun to accept the truth. It was a more settled kind of pain, the kind that arises when you finally understand that love alone can't make someone stay. She placed the papers in a drawer, not to forget what they represented, but to keep them as a silent marker, a symbol of the painful wisdom found in learning how to let go. And so, as their paths slowly parted, Camille and Ethan stepped into separate futures, beginning the slow and uncertain work of starting over. This story has come to an end. What's your opinion? Share it in the comments, my friend. And if you like this story, check out other exciting videos on my channel. I'll say goodbye until the next video. See you. At a party where champagne flows like a river and every smile looks cut from a glossy magazine, a single glance changes everything. She's in her element, dazzling, radiant, untouchable. He's there as decoration, a husband by title, not by presence. All the hazy doubts suddenly take shape. Her hand on someone else's arm, laughter that carries no trace of anything he knows. And then, tension, a crowd, a fight. Not impulse, but a response to betrayal, expertly wrapped in the golden veneer of a corporate gala. But this isn't just a scene of jealousy. It's the beginning of a carefully constructed downfall. His downfall. Because she has a plan, and he's just a pawn. For now. But if you think he'll take this lying down, you don't know what a man is capable of when he's been betrayed in front of everyone. Hello, my friend. I'm so glad you stopped by my channel. If you're here for the first time, don't forget to subscribe and share this video with your friends or family. It really helps my channel a lot. Please tell me in which city or country you watched this video. I value every one of your comments. So, let's get started. I remember the precise moment everything made sense. The instant I knew, with unwavering clarity, that Erica was involved with someone else. There weren't any whispered secrets or sneaky clues to decipher. It was glaringly obvious, almost as if it had been staged for maximum impact. We were at her firm's annual gala, the kind hosted in an over-the-top hotel ballroom downtown, where every surface shimmered a bit too aggressively. The place was dressed in black and gold, trying far too hard to look sophisticated. Champagne flutes clinked, laughter rang a little too forced, and executives floated around the room pretending they weren't just waiting for a chance to leave. I only showed up because Erica insisted. She always insisted. She claimed it looked better for her image when her husband was seen beside her. I didn't argue, even though I dreaded these nights. Had I known what was coming, I wouldn't have gotten in that cab. Even before we got there, something felt off. Erica barely acknowledged me on the ride over, glued to her phone, responding to my attempts at small talk with half-hearted nods and the occasional uninterested hum. But the second we stepped through those doors, she transformed, suddenly glowing, smiling like the version of her I hadn't seen in months. Lately, she'd been slipping away from me. Late nights blamed on work, business trips piling up, and a phone she treated like it was encrypted with national secrets. I didn't have proof, just that quiet, persistent feeling in my gut that something wasn't right, the kind that keeps you up at night, staring at the ceiling. But that evening, all the whispers of doubt turned into something loud and undeniable. As we moved through the crowd, mingling with her colleagues and strangers alike, the weight in my chest grew heavier. And then, by the bar, everything snapped into focus. That's when I saw Bryce. He was one of those overly polished finance types, the kind of guy who wears his self-importance like a badge of honor. Newly added to Erica's team, if I remembered correctly. Someone she'd mentioned in passing a few times, dismissing him as just another co-worker. But when she spotted him that night, her expression changed completely. It wasn't subtle. That smile wasn't friendly. It was charged. Bryce turned when she walked over, and the way he looked at her made my stomach twist. She laughed at his joke, leaned in too closely, touched his arm like she'd done it 100 times before. I stood there, frozen, watching a moment I wasn't supposed to see. Then, like I hadn't just witnessed something intimate, she turned toward me with a wave that felt staged. "Hey, babe," she said, slipping her arm into mine with syrupy, fake affection. "Come meet Bryce. He's the MMA guy I told you about." Bryce extended a hand, already smirking, like he was in on some twisted inside joke. "Nice to meet you," he said. "Erica mentioned you're into boxing?" The way he said it, the smugness, the challenge just beneath his voice, it was calculated. He looked me over like he was assessing the competition, and his grin widened, like he was already winning. Erica's fingers still lingered on his arm, a touch she didn't bother hiding. Everyone nearby saw it, so did I. I forced a smile and tried to act normal, but I knew the tension was written all over my face. Bryce seemed to enjoy it. Erica tossed her hair over her shoulder and added, "Don't be shy, babe. Bryce is really into MMA. You guys should totally spar sometime." Bryce laughed, setting down his drink, and flexed a bit as he replied, "Honestly, I'd be into that. I like a challenge. Think your guy can handle it?" My heartbeat kicked up. I met his eyes, my voice steady but cold. "You want to find out?" With a cocky grin, he peeled off his blazer and started rolling up his sleeves, clearly putting on a show. A small circle of curious onlookers began to gather, the scent of conflict drawing them in. Erica stepped back, slipping behind the crowd with a faint, unreadable smile on her lips. I thought about all the hours I'd spent in the gym, every bruise earned the hard way. Bryce had no idea what he'd just started. He lunged first, a clumsy, exaggerated swing aimed for my face. I sidestepped with ease, letting him stumble past me. A few people laughed, some gasped. His face turned red. He spun back around, angrier now, and charged again. This time, I caught his wrist mid-swing and twisted it just enough to make him wince. He hadn't expected a real fight. He hadn't expected me to fight back. He was fit, sure, but reckless. All ego, no discipline. I saw his confidence start to crack. That's when I heard her voice, loud enough for the whole room. "Don't go too hard on him, babe," Erica said with a smirk that hit harder than any punch. "No need to embarrass the guy." The crowd chuckled. Her words knocked the wind out of me. She was calling me an embarrassment. Bryce pulled away, clearly shaken. His stance was off, his breathing uneven. "Lucky shot," he muttered, jaw clenched. I steadied myself, ready to finish what he'd started. But before anything else could happen, Erica raised a hand and gestured towards someone just beyond the circle. "Someone break this up," she said, locking eyes with someone behind me. "I don't want Bryce getting hurt, or my husband." My husband? The phrase sounded strange coming from her mouth. Then I noticed the shift, the glances, the confusion. Who was she talking to? And then it all snapped into place. My boss, Raymond, standing just behind the crowd, watching everything unfold. I hadn't even known he was attending. Different company, sure, but same industry, same network. Erica clearly had known he'd be there all along. Maybe this had been her intention from the beginning. Maybe I'd walked right into a perfectly orchestrated setup. As expected, I spotted Raymond's unmistakable figure cutting through the crowd. "That's enough," he said firmly, stepping between us and shooting me a look heavy with disapproval. "Not here. This is a professional setting." Bryce grabbed his wrist as if I'd snapped it in half, grimacing dramatically. "He just snapped, man," he whined, playing the victim to perfection. Erica brought a hand to her lips, her eyes wide in manufactured concern. The surrounding murmurs grew louder as every head turned to me. I opened my mouth to speak, to defend myself, but Erica got there first, striding up to Raymond with feigned urgency. "He's out of control," she said, her tone sharp and panicked. "You saw it. He nearly broke Bryce's arm. He can't stay here. He's a threat." I stared at her, stunned. "What are you talking about?" I started, but she cut me down with a cold, withering glare. "You don't belong here," she said, flat and final. "This is my event, my company. If you can't keep it together, you need to leave." Right on cue, 2 uniformed security guards emerged from the edge of the room, probably temps brought in just for tonight. One gave us a once-over, then turned to Erica. "Is there a problem, ma'am?" Erica folded her arms and nodded slightly in my direction. "He's the problem," she said, her voice icy. "Please escort him out." Raymond met my eyes, unblinking. There was no empathy there. "Matthew, you heard her. Don't make this worse. Go home. We'll deal with this on Monday." My throat tightened as rage coiled inside me. She was fabricating everything, playing the audience like a seasoned actress, painting me as the aggressor. My fists clenched at my sides. "I'm not leaving until she tells the truth," I said, my voice taut with fury. Bryce stepped forward, smugness etched across his face. "Come on, man, let it go. No need to make a bigger scene." His words oozed condescension, but it was Erica's expression that hit hardest. That look of pure dismissal, like I was already forgotten. She gave the faintest nod to the guards, and that sealed it. I felt arms seize me from behind. I tried to pull away, to shake free, but another hand gripped my shoulder tightly. The crowd parted as I was dragged across the room. The guards held me tight, wrenching my arms behind me. I bit back the pain, refusing to give them the satisfaction of a sound. "You think you can just throw me out like this?" I snarled at the nearest one. I twisted hard, adrenaline flooding my system, but they didn't budge, like nightclub bouncers used to dealing with worse. One gave me a shove, and I caught the edge of a chair, stumbling but managing to stay upright. Behind me, Bryce's laughter rang out, sharp and mocking. "Move!" one of the guards snapped, yanking my arm so hard my shoulder flared with pain. That was it. The fury broke loose. I shoved back. One of them stumbled, but the other cracked an elbow into my ribs. Not enough to take me down, but it hurt, and I staggered. They didn't pause, just twisted my arm higher and pushed me forward again. "Let go of me," I barked, but they ignored me completely. Gasps trailed us, along with the click of recording phones. Erica was nowhere in sight, probably back in the crowd, draped on Bryce like the heroine in some twisted love story. I could picture her smiling as I was hauled away, satisfied. We passed the food tables, the coat check, then out of the grand hall. Just before we turned a corner, I caught one last glimpse of the ballroom. Spinning lights, shimmering dresses, curious stares. Then it vanished behind me. A dull service corridor replaced it, sterile and cold. One guard pulled open a side door, and without ceremony, I was shoved out into the night. I stumbled, nearly hitting the pavement, just managing to catch myself. The door slammed behind me with a metallic thud, the lock clicking into place like a final judgment. I stood alone, chest heaving, ribs aching with every breath. She orchestrated this. My own wife had set the entire thing in motion. And Raymond? He'd brushed me off like I was some out-of-line teenager. Bryce's smug, triumphant face burned in my memory. I wanted to smash something, scream, punch a wall, anything to let it out. But what would it change? I was alone. Just me, dumped behind the venue like garbage. I drew in a ragged breath, then another, and reached into my pocket for my phone. No footsteps behind me, no one coming. Just the flickering orange glow of a failing streetlight overhead. I tapped the screen, and my own reflection stared back, bruised and bloodied. A split lip from the elbow. Perfect. Still riding the rush of adrenaline, I turned from the building. My wife. My wife. I got in my car and peeled out of the lot, not even registering the stoplights as I blew past them. There was no going back, no waiting for her to finish whatever sick play she was putting on. She'd humiliated me in front of everyone. Worse, she'd made me look dangerous, unhinged. She wanted me gone? Fine. But this wasn't the end. Not even close. Sleep never came. My mind replayed the scene on an endless loop, Erica's hand on Bryce's arm, the way she clung to him for everyone to see. That smirk on her face. It was toxic. I had to know how long this had been going on. But deep down, I already did. This wasn't a momentary lapse. This was betrayal, deliberate and cruel. The way she plotted it all, the patterns in her behavior over the past few months. It couldn't be chalked up to some simple miscommunication. As dawn filtered softly through the blinds in our bedroom, I was already planted at the kitchen table, fully dressed, a mug of coffee going cold in my hands, as flavorless as tap water. Erica hadn't come back. Or if she had, she was hiding out in the guest room. The whole house felt hollow. I just sat there, absently spinning my phone between my fingers, caught in a loop of thoughts I couldn't silence. If I wanted to outmaneuver her, I needed more than suspicion. I needed undeniable proof. She was clearly on a mission to paint me as some paranoid, volatile mess. But if I wanted to walk away clean, maybe even leave her reeling, I had to play this with a clear head. A few weeks earlier, during a rare moment when she'd left her phone unattended on the counter, I installed a tracking app. Risky? Absolutely. Probably not legal either. But at that point, I didn't care. I tapped the screen and brought up the app. Sure enough, it showed her location. She wasn't home. She was across town, at an address I didn't recognize. Maybe she'd spent the night at Bryce's place. Maybe it was just another one of her hideouts. My leg jittered under the table as I stared at the blinking dot. I wasn't about to leave things up to fate. I was going to collect every shred of evidence I needed to dismantle her in court and make sure she walked away with nothing. She didn't return until late in the afternoon. I heard her car pull up, the engine cutting off with a low hum. The front door opened, and she stepped in like she hadn't just disappeared all night, still dressed in yesterday's clothes, hair a mess, wearing an expression like it was just another lazy Sunday. Her eyes landed on me with mild surprise. "Oh, you're still here," she said, raising an eyebrow. "Thought you'd be off blowing off steam at the gym or something." I stayed put in the armchair. "Funny. I could say the same to you. Where have you been?" She shrugged, lips curling into a smirk, and flung her bag onto the couch. "What difference does it make? You wouldn't buy the truth anyway." My jaw tightened. Enough with the games. I'm not pretending anymore. I know about Bryce. I know what you were doing last night. Her laugh was sharp and joyless. "You think I set you up? You're the one who threw a punch." "You made sure I got kicked out," I said, rising to my feet. My voice bounced off the walls. "You wanted to make a scene, humiliate me." She took a step closer, arms folding across her chest. "You did that to yourself. You don't even realize how unhinged you've been acting." My hands clenched at my sides. "I'm not here to argue semantics. I'm telling you now. This ends today, and I'll make sure you walk away with nothing, Erica." For a brief moment, her confidence cracked. I saw it in her eyes. There was fear buried beneath the anger. "Don't push me," she warned. "I've got enough on you to—" I cut her off with a laugh, cold and humorless. "On me? You don't even know the half of it." She had no idea I'd been tracking her for weeks. She didn't know I'd found the burner phone, or what secrets were hidden on it. She stared at me, eyes narrowing, trying to read the change in my tone. She inhaled sharply, probably preparing to launch into another attack, but I raised my hand to stop her. "Don't bother. We'll talk more later. I've got somewhere I need to be." I brushed past her, ignoring the heat of her glare. The rage still simmered beneath my skin, but I wasn't letting it control me. I had a strategy, and losing my temper wasn't part of it, not after everything that happened the night before. If I stayed any longer, we'd just end up in a screaming match again. In the days that followed, I moved with purpose. Every step she took was documented. Every outing, every address, every suspicious call. I collected screenshots of her messages. She got lazy, left her phone alone during showers, and I only needed a minute or two to forward all the receipts to my own inbox. It all formed a clear picture. She and Bryce had been meeting regularly. Seedy hotels, secretive lunches, after-hours rendezvous. Once I knew where to look, their carelessness was almost insulting. Worse still, I uncovered a thread of messages between her and Raymond, my boss. She was painting me as volatile, unstable, maybe even dangerous. She was laying the groundwork to ruin me professionally, to make sure that if things got ugly in court, I wouldn't have the strength or credibility to push back. Honestly, it was a cunning move. She was vicious. I had to respect that, even if I hated her for it. But she underestimated one thing. I could be just as ruthless. I made up my mind. The next time she met Bryce, I'd be there too. With the paperwork. I wanted to end it face to face, on my terms. I hired a lawyer, paid the rush fees, and had the divorce papers in my hands within days. Every last detail in place. Mid-morning, I got the notification I'd been waiting for. Her location pinged. She was heading straight to the usual spot, that boutique hotel downtown with the discreet underground lot and staff trained not to ask questions. My pulse quickened. This was the moment. I told my boss I needed the afternoon off, no explanations. I grabbed the folder, walked out, and didn't look back. I parked about a block from the hotel and waited. Watched the screen until her dot stopped moving. She was inside. Not long after, Bryce's sleek black BMW glided into view. He stepped out, glanced around casually, then strolled through the entrance like he owned the place. I kept my eyes on that doorway, every nerve in my body thrumming with fury barely held in check. After allowing them a few minutes to settle in, I crossed the street. The hotel lobby was quiet, almost sterile in its silence, with the front desk clerk offering me only a fleeting glance before returning to whatever she was doing. I briefly considered bribing her for a room number, but then the elevator chimed. Someone had summoned it. A tourist stepped inside, and I followed him in without hesitation. When the doors opened on the third floor, I exited calmly and moved down the hallway, my footsteps light. At the corridor's end, tucked discreetly in the corner, I spotted Bryce stepping out of a room. He hadn't seen me. His eyes were glued to his phone, probably texting Erica to say he'd made it. My pulse kicked up. I ducked behind a housekeeping cart as he rapped softly on a door. It cracked open. Erica peeked through, then quickly let him in. The door clicked shut behind them. That was it. The confirmation I dreaded but needed. No more doubt. I strode down the hall, heart pounding, fists clenched. Room 312. I didn't hesitate. I pounded on the door, 3 firm knocks that echoed through the silence. There was a pause, then a muffled voice, Erica's, called out, cautious and uncertain, asking who was there. I didn't answer. I just waited. The door eased open a few inches, and I slammed it wide with a shove. Erica staggered backward, caught off guard, dressed in a tight blouse and a skirt that barely qualified as clothing. Her hair was messy, the kind of messy that doesn't come from wind or sleep. Behind her, Bryce hovered near the bed, shirt unbuttoned, a patchy beard shadowing his jaw, eyes wide with panic. "What the hell?" Erica snapped, quickly pulling herself together. "Have you lost your mind?" Bryce stepped forward, his expression tightening. "You got a problem or something?" I let out a cold, joyless laugh. "You could say that." From inside my jacket, I pulled out a thick stack of documents and tossed them toward Erica. She batted them away, and they scattered across the floor like leaves in a storm. The title on the top page stared back at her. Petition for Dissolution of Marriage. "Congrats," I said, my voice like steel. "Now you can screw whoever you want, legally. Just sign where it says." Her face drained of color as she stared at the paperwork. You actually brought divorce papers?" she asked, barely believing it. Bryce took a step forward, rubbing his neck like he was gearing up to defend her. "Look, man, you can't just barge in like this." "You really want to see where this goes?" I shot back, adrenaline roaring in my veins. I considered breaking his nose. Instead, I slapped him, hard. The crack of it filled the room. He reeled sideways, catching himself on a dresser. Erica screamed, "Matthew! What the hell is wrong with you?" Dazed, Bryce blinked and moved like he was going to fight. I shoved him with a flat palm to the chest before he got anywhere. He slammed into the wall behind him, his head making a dull thud against the drywall. He winced, stunned, fingers rising to touch his cheek. I pointed straight at him, eyes locked. "Try it again," I said, voice deadly calm. "One more move, and I'll ruin a lot more than your jaw. I'll take your whole damn world apart." He didn't challenge me. Something in my face made him stop cold. Erica knelt beside him, touching his shoulder, then looked up at me, eyes burning. "This is madness. You'll be arrested for this," she hissed. "I don't give a damn," I said, voice like ice. "You think I'm bluffing? I've got everything. Pictures, messages, even video from the last hotel you two snuck off to. I could send it to your firm, Erica. Or maybe your mom would like a copy. What do you think?" Her lip curled in fury. "You're sick. This isn't who I married." "No," I said with a bitter smirk. "This is who you created." Bryce moved again, trying to rise. I snapped my eyes to him. "Don't even think about it." He froze, then slumped back down, breathing hard. For all his bravado, the guy didn't have the guts for a real confrontation. Erica rose slowly, pulling her hand away from Bryce. She gestured toward the divorce papers strewn on the floor. Her voice was razor sharp. "Fine, I'll sign. Just leave. That's what you want, right? Happy now?" I stepped in closer, my words like gravel. "Not even close, but the sooner I cut you out of my life, the better." I kicked the doorstop aside. "And hear me loud and clear. If either of you tries to twist what happened here, I swear I'll bury you both." Without waiting for another word, I turned and walked out. Behind me, I heard Bryce mumble something, and Erica reply in a sharp whisper, her voice trembling. I didn't care enough to make out the words. I had drawn the line, made it unmistakably clear. Over the next few days, Erica started the process of leaving in fits and starts. Some days she'd appear, scoop up a few belongings, then vanish again. Maybe she was stalling, hoping I'd mellow out, reconsider. Meanwhile, I methodically sorted through her things, her clothes, stacks of old snapshots, the random mementos she'd peppered throughout the house over the years. I wasn't playing the role of the obliging husband anymore. I hired a moving service known for quick, no-nonsense jobs. My attorney warned against simply dumping her stuff on the sidewalk. It wasn't legally clean, but boxing it all and sending it to another location? Totally allowed, especially since I'd given her advance notice. So I set it all in motion. About a week out, I rang her mother, Lillian, keeping my tone calm, clipped. "I'm arranging for Erica's belongings to be picked up. They'll be delivered to your house. She can deal with them from there. It's out of my hands." Lillian was furious. She'd always been Erica's defender, quick to cast blame my way, so her reaction didn't surprise me. I braced for it, held my ground. I told her again, coolly, that the marriage was over, and I was under no obligation to keep her daughter's things stored in my home. She ended the call with a shriek, "You'll regret this, you pathetic excuse for a husband," then slammed the phone down. I didn't flinch. That was the last item on the checklist. The day the movers arrived, fate had a little surprise in store. Erica chose that exact moment to show up, with reinforcements. Half her stuff was already packed and neatly arranged on the lawn. Clothes, furniture, household odds and ends. The moving truck was in the driveway, ramp lowered, as the crew carried out a dresser. I stood on the porch, supervising, when the screech of tires pulled my eyes toward the street. Her car jerked to a stop. Erica jumped out, followed by Lillian from the passenger seat. Then, to my disbelief, out of the back stepped my boss, Raymond. Yes, that Raymond. The same man who'd had security toss me out of the company party like I was some drunken embarrassment. I almost laughed. The sight of all three marching toward me, faces tight with anger and judgment, was surreal. Erica led the charge. "What the hell is this?" she barked, gesturing wildly at the boxes. "You're just dumping my stuff out here like trash?" I folded my arms. "No, I'm having it delivered, just like I told you I would." "We never agreed to this," Lillian hissed, storming up the steps. She stopped inches from me, brimming with fury. "You're a disgrace. Show some basic human decency," she snapped. Then Raymond stepped forward, adjusting his collar like he was prepping for a tense meeting. "Matthew, come on. Let's de-escalate. We're all adults here. Erica told me everything." He gave me that pointed, superior look. "The incident with Bryce, the threats. This is crossing a line." I let out a dry, hollow laugh. "Threats? She should count herself lucky I haven't pressed charges for the cheating, the public humiliation. And you, Raymond, you want to talk about crossing lines?" My voice sharpened. "You embarrassed me in front of everyone, had me dragged out like some drunk fool. That wasn't your decision to make." Raymond's jaw clenched. "You were out of control. You started a fight," he muttered, just as Erica jumped in, rage lacing her words. "You haven't changed at all. You're still the same angry, volatile man I can't even stand to look at. This is exactly why it's over. I snapped. You slept with someone else and then acted like you were the victim. Don't stand there pretending you're innocent. That's when Lillian lunged at me, hand raised. I caught her wrist mid-swing. She struggled, muttering curses under her breath as she tried to pull free. "Let go of my mom!" Erica screamed. I pushed Lillian back, not hard, just firmly enough to send a message. "Back off. This is my house. Get control of yourselves. I won't say it again." Before Lillian could reload for another verbal assault, Raymond stepped in. "That's enough, Matthew. I'll call the police if I need to." I pointed a finger at him, voice like ice. "Go right ahead. You're trespassing. I told Erica to come alone. You two weren't invited." Erica looked like she was ready to explode. "You don't understand. Raymond's here to help. I asked him to mediate. You can't just—" "I can, and I did," I cut her off, nodding toward the boxes. "I paid professionals to pack your things. They're being sent to your mom's. You're not staying here anymore. That chapter is closed." Then I glanced at the three of them, my voice low and cold. "Now get off my porch, or the movers can load you in with the rest of the furniture." Raymond's expression darkened as he took a step closer. "This is absurd. You're acting beneath yourself. Honestly, you've always been a little—" I didn't let him finish. I hit him. One clean, hard slap. The sound cracked through the air like a gunshot. He stumbled backward, nearly tumbling down the stairs. Erica let out a shriek. "Oh my God!" Lillian froze, her mouth agape, eyes wide with shock. "You're out of your mind." Raymond cupped his mouth, blood seeping from a fresh split in his lip. He stared at his hand in disbelief. "That's assault. You hear me? I'm calling the police." I exhaled slowly, adrenaline surging in my chest. "Do it," I said, voice flat. "Go ahead." "I'll tell the cops that you and Lillian forced your way onto my property after I told you both to leave," I said, voice level and unshaken. "It'll be your word against mine, and the movers." I tilted my head toward the truck, where the movers stood rigid, their unease written all over them. "They already heard me say you were trespassing. If they back that up, that's all law enforcement will need." "You're completely unhinged," Lillian hissed, eyes slitted with anger. I held up a hand, cutting her off before she could go further. "That's enough, Lillian. I'm done pretending we're all going to play nice. You raised a liar, and it's obvious she learned from a pro." Then I shifted my focus to Erica. "Grab your belongings and leave. Don't come back unless it's through your lawyer. Understood?" Erica's face contorted in rage. "You'll rot in hell for this." I gave a slow shrug. "Maybe so, but I'll rot in peace, in a house free of lies and betrayal." I pointed to the steps. "Now get off my porch." Raymond, nursing his bloody lip, tried to muster what was left of his pride. "You're finished at the company, Matthew," he spat. "I'm firing you first thing tomorrow. You're poison." I gave a cold laugh and stepped closer. "Is that supposed to rattle me? I've got more than enough evidence of your little affair with my soon-to-be ex-wife to bury you in court. Harassment, wrongful termination, you name it. Go ahead, Raymond. Pull the trigger. Let's see who goes down first." His face went white. Silence fell like a hammer. The tension was thick, almost vibrating in the air. Then Lillian grabbed Erica's arm. "We're done here. Let's go." Erica shot me one last hateful look. "This isn't over. I'll make sure I get what I'm owed." I held her gaze without blinking. "What you're owed is already packed in those boxes." Behind me, the movers were securing the last crate. I waved them on. "Get them gone, all of them. And if any of you show your faces here again, I won't be waiting empty-handed. I promise you that." Raymond found his voice again, barely. "You haven't seen the last of me, you pathetic freak. I'll make sure you're blacklisted. No company will touch you." I rolled my shoulders. "Funny, that's exactly what you said the last time you tried to intimidate me. Go ahead. Just don't expect me to play nice if you come back." Finally, the trio turned to leave, descending the porch in an awkward shuffle. Lillian hurled one last insult over her shoulder, calling me trash. I didn't flinch. I simply stood there, arms crossed, watching them slink off to their car. The movers looked shaken, pale as paper, but they continued loading the final pieces. One of them looked my way, unsure. I gave him a quiet nod. Everything's fine. For several minutes, no one said a word. Only the soft thuds of boxes and the scrape of shoes broke the silence. When the driver asked for the delivery address, I gave it to him without a pause. Almost on cue, Erica's car sped out of the driveway. She was at the wheel, Lillian riding shotgun, and Raymond sulking in the back. I imagined them screaming my name, already scheming their revenge. I couldn't have cared less. By the time the truck disappeared down the street, the sun was beginning to dip behind the rooftops across the way. A heavy stillness settled over everything, final, immovable. Bits of tape, scraps of cardboard, and plastic wrap littered the porch. I crouched, picked up a piece of bubble wrap, tossed it into the trash bin, and let out a slow, steady breath. The house was still, empty, but it was mine. This story has come to an end. What's your opinion? Share it in the comments, my friend. And if you like this story, check out other exciting videos on my channel. I'll say goodbye until the next video. See you.